Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. As we enter the month of July, I'm reminded of the path we may be taking each and every day. And a lot of times when we take these paths, we make a choice. There's a lot of power when it comes to the choices we make. Sometimes even when a lot of external events may happen or enter in our lives, a lot of times we still have a choice of how we respond or how to the event. Even if we don't feel any tangible changes we can make immediately, there is still a choice how we respond or how we look at that event. I want to, and also when it comes to choices, when we think about how we see things, some of the hardest things we can ask, especially as we get older, three words: I need help. Sometimes the hardest thing to ask as we grow older. I want to say we have a new guest. Her name is Huwaida today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being part of the discussion.
Most welcome, and thank you for having me.
No problem. I want to say in the States, we have 988 is the suicide crisis lifeline if you are struggling. But I don't like reinventing the wheel. What works for you? I always encourage those who are listening, wherever part of the world you're in, wherever community makes you feel safer, whatever helps you. I always encourage you to find that. And it's easy for me to say I need help, but in certain communities, when you don't pull, if you don't think about the cultural context, it's harder sometimes to ask those three words. I need help. I always start with a quote because people say better than me. Huwaida. Nelson Mandela. I really like some of the things he said in his life, and one of the things he says: "May your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears." It's one of the things I kind of thought about when I started Revive Ministries, just thinking about having the conversations no one wants to have. What comes to mind when you think about or when you see this quote?
It's very uplifting, you know, and also I'm quite aware that a lot of us are driven to make choices based on fear,
Mm-hmm.
because fear is always so pressing,
Mm-hmm.
and both in terms of the urgency of it and like how we feel it. We're a lot more tuned in to our fears than we are to our hopes, because hope, the feeling is very light, puts a smile on your face.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a very powerful and poignant statement, and very uplifting. And I mean, there's more to say about that, but I'm very, very aware of how that itself is a choice.
Yeah, I think I look at this quote. I used to think it, simply put, it is uplifting, but I also think it's what we strive to get to, because I
Hmm.
think a lot of things scare us. We're
Hmm.
out there, and it's not inherently bad to have, let's say, you know, um, as a kid, maybe you hurt yourself. You're playing something. You're just not being taking care of yourself, and you fall and you hurt yourself. You're a little scared, but there's something about um, growing in. Like, we have a lot of information in our world. Like right now, you can go online, you can have a lot of information, but information doesn't really equate to understanding, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. So that I feel sometimes fear may precede, but I think when Nelson Mandela said this, it's what we strive for. That we're not forced into doing things out of fear. We're not making choices based on it. I think fear may be the catalyst to say, "Hey, something has to change. This was scary," or whatever that may be. But inherently, the hope is that you move past that. You move to the point where you're making your choices, because there's a lot of other steps came between them from the fear to that. But I don't
Yeah.
think, like, just like anger, I don't think fear is necessarily bad. If I didn't understand to be careful, if I knew that if I didn't put my hand, like people who don't have sensitivity, they can't feel hot or cold, they could burn their hand. So fear kind of is a response, but it's not something that can always stay there as a static, you know, forced attrition. I'm only doing this because I'm. If I don't do this, that something will happen. What about doing something because you feel that it brings you something that makes you grow or helps you draw you to be a better version of yourself? So I feel that that's it's one thing. Kids go to school or they do these things, and I always laugh like, well, because their parents bring them there. It's not because they usually choose to, but eventually, they may find that value. Choice can also at times reflect our own self-image of ourselves. Like a lot of times, if our choice is only are all kind of motivated about how others people looks at us, it does kind of tell a lot about how we look at ourselves. I remember reading this. Get your thoughts on this. Anything you want to add, Huwaida? I read this one theory, looking glass self theory. I thought it was very interesting, just like the Pratt study, but it really suggests that our sense of self is based on our assessment of how others see us and judge us, not our own internal view of ourselves. So I feel we do this anyway when we're little and we're growing up. We look at others and we base that on ourselves. But the idea is to move past, just like not just move past that. So what are your thoughts when you think of this? And please interrupt me when it comes to anything you want to add or when it comes to choices of what we're talking about.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I do feel that we're wired to do so because it's very hard to see yourself,
Yeah.
So you see yourself in others and also in how others see you, right? And we're always navigating it. We learn from very young to address how we think people see ourselves, because we all have needs. Right? We all have needs. We might need, some of us might have this great need to belong. Some of us have great need for love, connection. For others, it's like all our needs are the same, but they rank differently, right? So if someone is really needs to have adventure and fun and excitement and all of that, then of course that's going to reflect on their choices. Right? They're going to choose to go with people who could provide that for them. And sometimes that could be adventure and sometimes that could be drama. Yeah. But it also and you you would assign that, you navigate that by how you think other people would fulfill that need. And therefore, we start to make up this composite of ideas of who we are. Right. And sometimes it's really funny. Have you noticed when people are on the phone, they have different voices for different people?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's basically this. We need to maintain that kind of we need to maintain that reaction, that response, so it adheres to our sense of self and the fulfillment of those needs. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah, it does. And I think, I'm saying this at the same breath of knowing that we desire to be included. It's like I cannot say this with saying, you're going to have this self-discovery about yourself, forgoing everyone else. You want to be included. Whether you're an introvert or not, you want to have that community, whatever that looks
and also excluded from certain communities.
Oh yeah, very true. Very true. I want to give you a moment, to kind of share, those listening a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you brought you here, whatever you feel comfortable. And I like to do this with new guests and just also update guests returning. So I'm giving you this time to kind of share a little about yourself, whatever you feel comfortable, anything that, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. So I am currently coaching. So the coaching that I do really focuses on helping people realize their unique blueprint for creating. When I think the word that gets thrown around a lot these days is manifesting. So I'm not a manifesting coach, because I do sense that creating is a skill and therefore it can be developed. right?
Hmm.
So, and everybody creates a different way, although there's like a sort of a general framework for people to follow. Everybody needs to know what they want to create if they were to create anything.
Hmm.
And that's where most people have problems with, like, to know what they want. 90% or more than that of the time, people answer that question wrongly. If you ask them what do they want,
Hmm.
90% of the time they will tell you what they don't want.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah, so there's this general framework of creating, and then I sense that everybody, because they have an identity, like they have certain needs, and then preferences and values. Everybody creates best differently, and the idea is, you take the path of least resistance
Hmm.
to create anything. Just like how energy flows, electricity, water, they take the path of least resistance. So do we as humans. Except that when 90% the path of least resistance is not knowing what you want,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
the path of least resistance brings you straight onto a wall. And so that's what I coach on. I coach on basically understanding that you can create, that you're a creator, and you're a co-creator, um, and then this is how you do it best.
Hmm. Yeah, I found that you mentioned 90% of the time people just kind of describe what they don't want, and I find that very interesting. A lot of times, I'll be some young people will be doing video editing, or they'll be telling me what equipment I need. And I feel like I'm around a bunch of commercials that are just walking to me, like whatever. And I say to them very clearly, no. No is a complete sentence, because the fact of the matter is, I know what they're saying is, valid, because I could read it in, like, online. It's information, but, like, I know when I first started the podcast, I had a gaming headset, I had a really crappy computer, and at the same time, I could just get stuck on what I don't have. I could get stuck on what, like, all the equipment, but the one thing I knew was I just had an idea and I just ran with it. And the idea was, um, at least in my church setting, what I a lot of times see people do is what they don't do, which is they don't talk about this stuff. So whatever it is, so a lot of the things I said, well, why don't I have a platform that's easy so people can talk? And I said, this is the outreach. So I said, okay, what does that mean? Well, outreach means, like, you go medical outreach. They go out there, they give supplies, they kind of serve community. So what am I really serving? I'm serving a platform for people to talk about things that they don't normally feel they can talk about. And for me, I don't I really kind of sway away from the politics or whatever it may be that people have on this, but and that is where I guess the germination or that came forth of me creating this. Did I, the reality is I'm human, right? So there's definitely episodes that, when I was trying to draw it up, that, wasn't like, I wouldn't say it was just, I knew I needed a more consistent flow. And one of the thing was, I thought month by month, you always see months with remembering this or remembering that, because one thing as humans, we don't remember anything real well. I know this work in the mental health field is that 3 months, someone will, do such big stride. 3 months later, they forgot what they just got out of. They're complaining about what they're in right now. Not to say that you're going to sit there and be static, but the idea is we're horrible at remembering things. So I'm like, hey, why don't just use that as a platform to monthly kind of use. Obviously, some are already done. Like, May in the United States is Mental Health Awareness Month, so I try to make it more personal. I find that that's very helpful. So it was a couple months ago when this year was remembering our names. I thought that was very kind of conducive to what, names is very powerful. And then just and that became my platform, and that kind of widened it up. So I like what you say when it comes to it's something learned, and it is something that is a skill that you don't just it's something that gets developed because I keep learning. And I think I embrace that some things I won't go. My attitude towards it may change. My perspective of what I'm creating may change, but the core of it, like I was trying to describe at the beginning, is kind of why I'm doing this. Does that make sense in a weird way? So I do appreciate you sharing that. Coaching is how long have you been doing it? Do you find it very? How do you find it for yourself? Just asking.
Personally, like how it started was because I was quite annoyed with myself at how my dreams seemed to be coming true for other people or by other people. Like I
Yeah.
would notice something and I'm like, I wanted that for myself. That was my idea, you know, like and then I realized that I had this. At first it was a pocket full, then it was like a sack full, and then it was a room full of dreams
Mm,
that I've been ignoring. And from
mm,
time to time, they would be knocking on their door, screaming
mm,
for my attention. And it really
mm,
speaks to the spirit. Like, you know, like everything is fine, but something's missing. It's
mm.
your dreams in the closet that wants to
Yeah.
be let out. Right. And then, like, one day I'm just like, okay, enough of this screaming and like feeling disappointed with myself because I could have done should have done that. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had it, and I've got everything that I said I needed to have in order to perform it. I have the time, I have the resources,
Mm,
I have the people, support, but why haven't I done it yet? So I eventually walked into that room and
mm,
said to my dreams, like, little kids, like, I'm going to take one of you for a walk the whole year,
mm,
whatever it is. If it's
mm.
like, I want to sing like Mariah Carey. I mean, like, it doesn't matter. It's my dream, right? So I'm going
Yeah.
to take that one for a walk for the whole
Mm,
year. So I'm going to take singing lessons. I'm going to like even say yes to performing at karaoke, and maybe it's like on
mm,
stage one day. You know what I mean? So,
mm,
and then like if I can't handle it, I'll put it back and take another dream out for the rest of the year. But
mm,
hopefully, I would like stick to it for the year. I
mm,
think 12 months is long enough
mm,
to stretch yourself. And if it ends up being part of you, like I said, now it's like the path of least resistance, right? You
mm,
become
mm,
what you dream of,
mm,
right? So just to go back to what you're saying, like how long have I been doing this? It's like I've wished all my life.
mm.
I've
Yeah.
dreamt all
Yeah.
my life,
Yeah.
right? When I decided to fulfill my dreams, I was
Mm,
already like in my early 20s. And one day I walked into that closet, and the thing that really spoke to me was my relationship with my father.
mm,
Because I remember a time when just hearing the jingle of his keys out on the other side of the front door would get me off the bed, excited, flying to the front door. Like as soon as he opens it, I'm jumping on
mhm.
him, giving him a hug, right? But that was decades back, and I don't
Yeah.
remember having that moment with him anymore. Like somehow when I grew up, like we started to become more distant. He was
Mm,
the provider of the family. As long as there's food on the table, that was enough. That was his love language. But
mm,
mine was sort of like spending time talking and whatever. And it was very hard for me to realize that, hey, um, I have this relationship and it's dry and
mm,
it's not affectionate and it's not nourishing. And I could hear from my mom,
mhm,
her saying like, oh, when it's my mom's birthday, then all of the kids get really excited and take her out to restaurant. But when it's my dad's birthday, it's her doing the rounds, getting
mhm,
signatures
mm,
for his birthday card.
mhm, mhm.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's a very different relationship. And that was, for me, it hurt so much
Mhm,
when I realized that. And so that was the dream that I decided to take for a walk for a year. And it was very difficult because we have zero conversation.
mhm,
And to start having a conversation with someone that you've,
mhm.
hardly ever, it's a task and a half.
Yeah.
And it was only 7 years later that I could literally walk up to him and, give him a hug just because.
Mhm,
Because I tried very much to be. Basically, I divorced him as my father.
mhm,
And I looked around and I said, what is the best relationship I have right now? And
mhm,
it was the highest form of love that I was experiencing, apart from my
mm,
mom and me, was and God as well, was friendship.
mhm,
And I'm like, no more father, now you're a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started treating him as a friend, our relationship slowly blossomed. And when I say slowly, it was like painfully slow,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But that success
Mm-hmm.
led me to thinking, hey, actually, let me take this next dream for a walk. I wanted to live around the world. I wanted to retire early. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be financially independent. Now I have a different thinking about financial independence. But then it was like all of these things that's normal. Like everybody wants to do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I started being able to achieve and show up in this manner that my friends started to think, hey, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you like so free to meet everybody? Oh, because I'm fun employed, I only work when I want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I even fire clients that I don't want to work with because we might have an issue of integrity or clash in values. And I started inviting my friends to say, if you do this and this, if you have an accountability buddy, I'm very happy to be yours.
Mm-hmm.
And so it started off 6 years ago with just two friends
Mm-hmm.
being an accountability buddy to them. And then the next year it doubled. And then the next year it doubled. And then the next year it doubled. So by the fifth year, and I'm like, am I kidding? Like, do I need a bigger sign?
Yeah.
So this year is the year that I realized that, okay, I'm going to have to take this to the world. Like the fact that some of the philosophies that I apply,
Mm-hmm.
things like desiring something, wanting something has nothing to do with deserving it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people right now, if you don't even have to go far, you just open TikTok or Instagram or Twitter, and it will tell you, you attract what you feel you are worth or what you deserve. And I'm like, no, why is everybody subscribing to this?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know, it if that were the case, a baby would wonder if it should ask for milk.
yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Deserving has nothing to do with desiring, and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa. Or the other philosophy that I apply is time is your friend. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are very anxious about like, why hasn't it happened yet?
Oh yeah.
Or I missed my chance. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, everything is perfectly timed all the time.
Yeah.
And this is how you do it. As long as you pay attention to your skill and your behavior and your actions and your awarenesses, because
Mm-hmm.
only awareness gives us choice,
Mm-hmm.
because only awareness gives us possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make time your friend. You don't go against time. You don't battle with the present. You don't antagonize over the past or even the future.
Mm-hmm.
It's a deep subject, but um, in short, 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this officially with other people for 6 years, but I've
Well,
been
that's
doing this creating for myself since my early 20s.
well, that's wonderful. The idea that I think is really grounded. A lot of times, um, how can you say? I like what you mentioned. Time. At least I can relate to that. I was thinking about the level of urgency there is around the world, no matter what, what economic, what social, what market, whatever you're doing. There's never enough time, and it kind of just runs through your fingers. There's never enough time. I just a lot of times, at least for me, when I'm working in the mental health field, is just reminding. Like I said, we're very easy forgetting where we were 3 months ago. The person could be homeless and then they're in a place now, but now the problems are, not to minimize the problems that they're having at the moment, but you know, I a lot of times equate the idea that um, sometimes I think when I was reading from Man Finding Meaning from Viktor Frankl years ago, when I first read that, what really stood out to me, which was said eloquently, paraphrasing, was the people who made it wasn't the ones who were super optimistic. Yeah, like like you mentioned, like TikTok, like, oh, you just think it and you try. I know this from being in very competitive in art school. Well, not art school, but like we had an arts program in high school. Just realizing how much I sucked. To tell you the truth. I wasn't that great. I remember going to good track, and I was 11, 12 years old, nationals, and I was not great at all. What I realize really, and I feel like, funny enough, I tell this to some of the youth in my church, is like, it was like that was like the best lesson for me. I realized I wasn't that hot at anything I did, but at the same time, you don't want to keep going down that spiral. But at the same time, I was also good at other things I wasn't even accounting for at that time. So I feel having that balance, because there's a phenomenal people out there with extraordinary gifts, but at the same time, should have all. What is my time? What is going to happen to me? You're only subjected to your own time. No one. It's your own time. I always say siblings make horrible parents. I say this really quickly, and I'll say it because I think it's just true. I'm not saying that for my own brother. I'm just saying in general, because you're in the same kind of season of life. It's very difficult because your sibling could be having kids or have kids, whatever, but it doesn't really bode well, because at the end of the day, if things are going sideways, no one's going to be homeless with you. I'll tell you the truth. Like, honestly, if you make choices that lead to your only concern is how other people see you, and time is never enough for you, which really means never enough time for what you think others should see you as, it becomes very difficult to actually have any room for whoever you are. Whoever that is, you don't even meet who you are. I also, when you were speaking, Robert Fritz has this quote. I really love how he says this. It says, if you limit your choices only to what seems possible or reasonable, you disconnect yourself from what you truly want, and all that's left is compromise. I think it kind of strikes really deep about what you're saying and what I'm kind of saying, because there's so many reasons for us to do nothing or kind of make excuses, and I'm not saying this in a derogatory way. It's just we're afraid at times. If we recognize what we're feeling at the moment, sometimes it could just be, this is scary. I don't like how this is going right now. I don't like that my life is this way. Okay, it's honest. It's not like, okay, putting your head in the sand. As humans, I think it's very honest to have those conversations inside. Doesn't mean that you're selfish. At the same time, I wish some people were a little bit more selfish with their own self, like to actually take the time for themselves to recognize, hey, this is not great. People will either, and to go back, I want to ask you real quick. I'm moving, I don't know, got lost in my thought and all this, but why do you think, actually, reading this quote, what do you think when you see this quote? Before I move on, what comes to mind when you see this quote?
Really cool quote, and that's what I see from my clients as well. They are all brilliant, amazing. Like I have PhD students in my who come to see me. I have business people. There was one guy who pivoted his company from a sports academy into a restaurant. Well, actually, no, he kept the sports academy, but he also created a restaurant in the middle of the pandemic, in 2020 and 2021. It was like, I think he said something like, other coaches would tell me to, face reality. They're like 1 in every 5 businesses are closing down right now, and I'm opening one up, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds great, because like if I were to use what Robert Fritz says here, like the soul, the spirit doesn't deal in compromise. So when you're not going after what you want, like what you truly want, it's as if you can see yourself as a physical body, as a mental body, and emotional, your heart and your spirit. It's as if like you're just on that mode of getting by daily, and you've left behind your mind, or maybe it's your mind and your body, but you've left behind your heart. And the heart, there's so much research on this. The heart is much stronger than
Mm.
the mind. But the thing is, it's the body and the mind that runs in the
Mm.
functions and operates in this world,
Yeah.
right? So it has to follow, kind of like follow suit. But
Mm-hmm.
if you live by your hopes, by inspiration,
Mm.
inspiration is the language of the spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And inspiration is, there's no compromise there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I really love this talk, this quote by Robert Fritz, and I think he's one of also the people who really advocate creating
Mm.
as something that you can develop and something that you can do.
Yeah.
So if you read his book, it talks a lot about that, and he's a prolific creator.
Yeah. And I was also thinking with choices, a lot of people think of sometimes, not making a choice is a choice. Just sitting
Yeah.
there is a choice. But on the other side, we mentioned like time, and I was thinking, I read this one story. I believe it was, you remember back in the day with Reader's Digest. I don't know. It was a story that's one. It's kind of a lesson story. A person's riding a bike and in this community, and he sees someone pass him, so he's just riding to beat him, and the guy's pretty fast, so he's just riding, try to chase him, try to chase him. He beats him, but the kind of the lesson of the story that he had to turn around, go 10 blocks back because he missed his turn. So the point is, he was so focused on beating this person, losing sight of what he really wanted to do. He went way past where he wanted to go to. So I thought it was a great illustration. I think Jim Rohn, I also pulled this one. He said, it doesn't matter which side of the fence you get off. Sometimes what matters most is getting off. You cannot make progress without making decisions. I know that kind of goes on both sides of this, but yeah, sometimes we get really hyper focused. You're like, I need to do this, or I need that. I need to be married. I need to have that house. What if you're doing that, not even realizing there's other things while you're missing along the way that may be more of a priority? One thing that I thought was astonishing, me in the mental health field, I suffered from mental illness before, and the one thing I realized is, man, my view was very skewed. It was only from the person of being a client, or me being struggling at the time, but then you also have the cultural context. You got the family. There's a lot more to it. But what I really realized with during this, when I think about the context of of perception, a family will be like, oh, this person needs to get a place for it so they can be independent. They may just throw money at the person, but the person's priority may not be that. Maybe there's just their self-image, how they feel. Maybe it's just, cultural context is a big thing. So in your Asian, Korean household, your oldest son, other people in the States will not understand it. If you're the oldest son, you're not married, you're not doing well, it's very heavy. So that's not, so when I see someone, parents like, oh yeah, if he gets this place, why isn't this getting everything in line, but the person is just going to be miserable, it doesn't want it, he's like, I'm just going to be sad somewhere else. So like sometimes the parents or whatever, they're like, oh, they have this vision, and it's not that it's bad, it's just not the individuals themselves. That's why I kind of look at both sides. That's why it's so important to take the time to kind of know what you want, what choices, like, and be able to articulate. I want to ask you, why do you think making choices is so important to that? That's obviously obvious, but what do you take out of it when it comes to making choices? Why is it important for us today to talk about?
To talk about it, well, actually, it goes back to what Jim Rohn says. It's basically, if you don't make that choice, you don't get to have that experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then when we are stagnant, actually, like if you see water, if water is stagnant, it starts to,
Mm-hmm.
bacteria starts to fester, and it's no
Yeah.
longer, fulfilling its intent, or its intention. It's like it's not in its nature to be stagnant. It's in our nature to evolve. It's in our nature to learn and grow,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's what making choices is. Even if I circle back again to that story about the bicycle,
Mm-hmm.
the good thing about it, like, okay, so he fulfilled that value of like, right now my need is to compete or to get to that person, right? But if you take a look at a larger, sort of like larger picture, the thing is he's able to return to where he wanted to go in the
Yeah.
first place.
Yeah.
And of course, he might feel regret that he wasted time or effort, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe one day he's going to be able to put that down and say, hey, actually, that extra spurt really helped me
Mm-hmm.
understand that I really like to compete in races. And then
Yeah.
now he's discovered something about, you see, everything moment to moment, it's you
Mm.
making meaning out of what
Yeah.
happens to you. So it's really important to know what you want exactly, because then if you go off track, like that man on the bike or that
Mm.
woman on the bike, that character, you can always return
Yeah.
to what is more meaningful to you. So that's super important, going back to knowing what we want. And it
Mm.
definitely, what you said, Robert, is like spend time reflecting upon this and spend time understanding where it's coming from. Is it coming from your culture? Is it coming from your family? Is it coming from, your needs, your
Mm.
values, preferences? Whatever inspires you. I believe dreams, like inspiration,
Mm.
are divine.
Mm.
So when you honor that, you're starting to honor what you are, the gift of you in the
Mm.
world. You have a certain set of skills innately given within you, talents, etc. So when you honor that desire or your inspiration, you're actually starting to match up.
Mm.
Like, this is my gift to the world. If I pursued this, it would uplift me. It would allow me to really, open up a channel or a path that's not been opened up this way before.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Why
Mm.
why do we listen to love songs or any of those songs, even though they're like millions around the world? Is because it's not been said that particular way before,
Yeah.
and it somehow aligns to you at that moment. And why do we have 8 billion people? Because there are 8 billion ways to do certain things,
Yeah.
and you are that gift who shows that, who forges that path,
Yeah. I
yeah, or
want to.
solidify. Sorry.
No, that's totally. I'm loving it. I just want to ask you. I know you said this, but as we wrap up, what has helped you and what has not helped you making the hardest decisions in your life? Just a little, maybe, for those listening, maybe they're just stuck, or they feel
Yeah.
that they're stuck more accurately. What has helped you and what has not?
And you know what you said earlier about, having to go through, having gone through, Robert, some mental episodes,
Yeah.
right? We all go through it.
Yeah.
People think, like, for example, depression,
Mm.
it's like you go get better and you never get it again. No, I see depression like as a
Yeah.
cold. You get it from
Yeah.
time to time.
Yeah.
It's like it's like whether you can function or you can't function.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in those times when you're trying to make a decision, it's
Mm.
very hard to make a decision that's really true to the moment,
Mm.
at the same time true to your idea of your vision for yourself. Because if you say, like, for example, if you're a naturally grateful person, naturally on a good day, and then suddenly you have a bad day, you receive bad news, and then you're like, okay, now I want to make myself feel happy again. I'm gonna list 10 things I'm grateful for, but then, like, these are the things that you're normally grateful for, but you're just
Mm-hmm.
not feeling it. It's really akin to lying to yourself,
Mm.
right? So what has helped is, like, being in your body and being in your mind and being in the moment. Maybe not so much your mind, because your mind can really take you out of the time where you are, either in the future or the past, but really, like, sort of like pausing.
Mm-hmm.
Pausing has helped because it lets you settle down, lets your
Mm.
mind settle down, and be honoring of what you need at that time.
Mm.
What also helps is having people around you who um, do not have an agenda,
Mm.
who are interested in your well-being, your health, your that your life is full of joy, or has joy if it's not completely full of it, like people who just think the best of you. And even if it's just one best friend or two, think of, Eeyore,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember him.
right? Right? So he's not trying to be anybody else if he's, overthinking it, or miserable, but he has people around him. And that's super important. That's a structure. The path of least resistance is really like when someone you trust and love
Mm,
and cares for you comes in and says, hey, here's a safe space for you to bawl your eyes out,
mm,
and then you'll be better again, and you can make that decision that you need to make. And whatever
mm.
decision you make is going to be right for you now, even if it means that you have to like ride 10 kilometers down the wrong road.
Yeah, I love that you tied that story because I was also, um, I a lot of times our journey in life is takes a lot of side roads, a lot of dirt trails. It's not like this. Oh, A to B. Sometimes it go A to L, and then it goes around. So give yourself a little bit of grace, those who are listening. Whatever a lot of times, you know, you know, I just love the idea that. Mm, understand that this stuff will take time. If you look at the macro scale of what you've been dealing with, probably been a while. It's not going to be solved tomorrow or even next month. But at the same time, those little steps. I was going to save this quote to the end, but I love it. I just want to share it. A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. I love it because it just kind of speaks volumes of what we're talking about. Um, because at the same time, I love comedy a lot of times. The main reason is because it kind of embraces our humanity. The fact that we are impressively not impressive at the same time. Sometimes we have those moments. Sometimes we are, and like funny enough, working in the mental health field, I find like diagnoses are great, especially when some people first getting in, they're like, I need to know why. But
Mm.
beyond that, my hopes is it's kind of anticlimactic because a lot of times those diagnoses, because everyone's different, those diagnoses are really for billing and treatment. That's it. There's not really the individual themselves. So I don't want people listening to get hung up on some sort of word. Get the care that you need. Get what helps you. Find what helps you. I mentioned having struggled with mental health issues before, but it doesn't define who I am. I'm still Robert. I'm still working through. Sometimes, you get stuck on this ruminating thought sometimes, but a lot of times I find even us, just allowing to be present and understanding that this sucks right now, but a lot of times, you just kind of it's kind of like some of those feelings have to go through with its process. It has to go through you, not avoid it. At least from my experience, as we're sharing what has helped me is just letting things go through and an understanding when I remember when I'm doing sometimes I'm like, oh, it's gonna take so long. I time it. Why I timed it? It's comical. Like a lot of times I'm like, this is gonna take forever. It's like 8 minutes. It's not. So give yourself a little bit of grace. You have and like prioritize, personalize what you're doing. Like only way you can actually feel you have time is giving the context that makes sense. Like you're not just, well, I heard. Don't listen to your neighbors. Listen to you. Who are you? What is your context? I want to allow you to give your final thoughts and to those who are listening and anything else you want to share, Huwaida.
Actually, I want to respond to what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to your neighbors and yourself, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the final check. Because you're gonna have to live with that decision,
Yeah.
right? But do listen to our neighbors, because, like, we live in a society. We live
Mm-hmm.
through people. The only way you get anything done is through others, even if it's
True.
something that you want to do for
True.
yourself. But the final check is you.
Exactly. Like, and I guess sometimes I emphasize don't listen to your neighbors just because I fear. Well, we talked about fear before. The fear is that you're not going to listen to yourself. You're just going to listen to your
Right.
neighbors. The idea is
Absolutely.
if
Yeah.
you're able to get to hearing advice, hearing different ideas is wise. It's good to
Yeah.
hear what other people are saying.
Yeah.
This Cypriotic, Cyprus. There's this I guess it's a proverbs or something. It says, "Don't water a neighbor's garden if your garden's dry."
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's basically what I'm saying. So,
Yeah. Well, you need to do it with not caution but discernment, I would
yeah.
say. Again, if the people are looking out for your best,
Mm,
loving and caring. I mean,
mm,
if they cannot go to the level of love, let them come from the level of care.
mm.
Like, or at least to do no harm.
yeah.
At the very least, if you know that, then obviously listen,
Yeah.
right? To take in opinions, because you can't. You're not an island,
Yeah. And
right?
I.
So my final thoughts, well, definitely thank you very much, Robert, and I wish well to
Mhm,
everybody who's listening and the world around them.
mm.
I believe that if you really pay attention, that there's a lot of good in the world and a lot of good that you have created, and I invite people to be a conscious creator, a deliberate causer of good, as they move through their days.
Thank you. What I want to say, um, my final thought is accountability is not a bad word when it's a safe place. Create those safe places where you're at, whoever they are. I know I'm pretty. Oh, don't listen, but build the positive people around you. Then you could, and then accountability. What you want to do is not scary. You're gonna fall. You're gonna make mistakes. That's okay. Uh, Focus on what's important to you. Be around positive people. Be around people that are there for the right reasons. And I want to say thank you again, Huwaida. Just
Thank you
continue the
so much.
dialogue and sharing your thoughts. It's been great. I want to share with those who are listening. Remember to stay updated with all things Revive Ministries through the various platforms, reviveministriesfl.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can find them links on the channel, on the website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries Podcast. Leave with the last quote. I already spoiled it, but I love it. And it's a ship in the harbor is safe, but that is not what a ship is built for.